Um, I'm resident of college for YouTube. Joel Sains. That's my buddy Butch Rosenbalm. That's my buddy Alan Gallant. We're here to review the movie Key Largo. Starring Edward G. Robinson, Humphrey Bogart, Lauren Bacall, Lionel Barrymore. There's a who's who of cast in this movie, and they're all great. Butch, when did you first see this movie?
Oh, somewhere in the early mid '90s, after Big Sleep and Casablanca, and I was on my devouring bogey uh, routine. And by the way, I want to mention we have a rabbit, and his name is Bogey.
Nice.
So, Bogey, he's upstairs. He's a little too big to be carrying around.
Yeah.
Anyway, sorry.
No, that's good. That's good.
This is one I like to come back to. It's every so often. As much as I enjoy pretty much every Humphrey Bogart film I've ever seen, this one's a little underappreciated, I think, just because it's there's not a whole lot of action, but there's a lot of stuff in this film that goes on. It's really, really good, and honestly, I wish it had maybe had a little bit better reputation, or was better well thought of, or whatever. It's like it's kind of getting lost, I think.
Yeah, there's several of his movies, and also Huston's that from that era are kind of not talked about a lot.
Yeah, I think too. It's because Treasure of the Sierra Madre is so good. People sometimes forget about this one. And I'm not saying Treasure of the Sierra Madre is bad. It's really great.
It is.
But this movie also has a weather element to it too, where you have gangsters, not just battling Bogart's character, but battling a goddamn hurricane.
Mm-hmm.
You have a force of nature that is a part of the plot of this movie, and it's beautiful and dangerous at the same time. It's so amazing how they shoot this too. You see the wind, you see the waves, and you hear it too. Everything clicks to this movie. Butch, you're right. There's so much going on with this movie. You have a gangster in Rocco, who's played by Edward G. Robinson, a guy who was used to playing gangsters.
But made his own playing gangsters.
Yeah, and he commands this film, him and Bogart both, and he really does a great job of, here's this woman who can sing, and she's like, I need a drink. She is shakier than the shakiest gun in the West. She wants a drink. And they're like, no, you can't have a drink.
There's hope for her because she's also really well put together. Clothing looks good. Her hair looks great. She's not like completely broken down. She's just like got a little problem there.
Yeah.
Before we go any further, I'm putting a metaphorical gun to each of your heads. Which is better, this or Treasure of Sierra Madre? In your opinion, no right or wrong. I'm just curious what you'll say.
I like this one better because I'm a Florida guy now and have been for years. And the first time I saw this, it was like, and seeing the storms and all of the milieu, even though a lot of it is special effects and it's not real, some of it, I think there might be some footage that's kind of real, but there's a lot of it that was actually created in a studio, which amazes me. It's just really cool. And it has that, it's noir, but at the same time, it has that sort of tropical flavor that you get when you go down to the southern part of the state. And I like
tropical noir. Like that.
I like this movie a lot. I like Sierra Madre too, but I'm not as much of a desert guy as I am a subtropical guy. So I like the setting much better.
Well, there was a question posted to me earlier by our buddy Butch Rosenbalm here. He said, do you sleep? And I said, of course I sleep. I have to see the desert somehow. So I'm going to choose Treasure of the Sierra Madre because it has desert. I love desert.
There you go.
I hope to roll in desert one day. But no, in all honesty, this movie is great, though. You can't go wrong either way. both are great films, and both of their are their own films too. They're not the same thing. Bogart was in a lot of films, and with Houston, and both these movies are so damn good. If you own them, you will not regret either. Butch, what do you prefer, sir?
I'm going to go with Key Largo, but just a smidgen. You know, pretty much everything you guys have said. I mean, there's no hate on Treasure Sierra Madre.
Absolutely not.
I mean, it's a fun film. I enjoy it. The only thing, one reason I give, well, there's two reasons. One, I've actually been through Key Largo. I used to have a cousin that lived down in Key West.
Yeah.
So, you know, I was like 7. So, I mean, it's not like I remember bits and pieces, but still always hope to go back. But also, Bogey kind of becomes the bad guy in Treasure of Sierra Madre.
Yes, he gets gold fever in the whole 9 yards. Yeah. Yeah, he does.
I just don't like that. I mean, if they could have like walked him back just a little bit, I mean, he could still be, you know, Fred C. Dobbs, just fine. By
but not
the
Duke
end,
and T, you know, which is what
Yeah.
he's kind of more like in Treasure of Sierra Madre. I always preferred Bogey, and still do, as a conflicted anti-hero kind of guy, a guy who doesn't want to be the hero, but then again, he has to be the hero because he has a moral compass and a sense of ethics. The Sam Spade guy, and this guy they're
Rick from
great.
Casablanca.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's the thing too. You're right. He's very much conflicted within this movie, because here's a guy who's coming, you know, from the war. They think he's a war hero, and this is something what you and I have talked about several times in other movies involving like war figures, where sometimes, you know, it's a lot of soldiers don't shoot at the enemy unless they shoot at them first. And that's all I always took at Bogart's character here too. It's that he, you know, he didn't want to shoot at the enemy, but they were probably shooting at him first.
He also didn't want to brag on anything. He was uncomfortable with that, because at the end of the movie, she says, "Oh, it was you out on the line. It wasn't my husband who was killed. It was you," according to the letter that her husband the last letter that he had sent her, apparently. So he's a reluctant hero.
Yeah.
As well.
Yeah. There's something, I don't know how old Alan is, but I'm Generation X. We grew up,
I'm
you know,
end of the baby boom. I'm 64.
Okay. So yeah, you're there with this. Our grandfathers fought in World War II. Our fathers fought in Korea and Vietnam. One thing I grew up noticing was people who really saw some stuff, if you read into that,
yeah,
they didn't want to talk about it. I mean, my grandfather, excuse me, my dad's dad, that's when I would get worried. He would be in the hospital and maybe not doing well, and he would start to talk about World War II, and that's when I would get worried, because the rest of the time he never talked about it. I was in my 30s before I found out my grandfather was at D-Day.
Yeah.
And I tried to talk to him about it, and he really didn't want to talk about it. So, you know, I let it go. I mean, he told my dad some stories, and, you know, whew.
Yeah, it's PTSD time for a lot of those guys. I mean, and subsequent wars as well. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think that actually in an era that didn't name it that, Bogart's character in this exhibits a little bit of that guilt and so on. Doesn't want really, and if he does talk about it, he wants to throw the experience onto somebody else, you know, to make them feel better. So yeah, it's an interesting phenomenon that was well known back then under different names. So,
here's a question for you guys: what's you guys' favorite Lauren Bacall Humphrey Bogart team up movie?
First one, To Have and Have Not.
Yeah, that's pretty good. Yeah, that's
just because the chemistry between them was super powerful, and it was incendiary at that time because they had just met.
Yeah,
that's the one where she says, "You know, that whole thing."
Yeah, but
I'm flipping between Big Sleep and Dark Passage, and just because, I mean, Lauren Bacall really doesn't have a whole lot to do with this film.
Yeah.
I'm not knocking it. I mean, it's basically supposed to be pretty and be supportive.
Yeah.
Dark Passage, she gets to act.
Mm.
You know,
Big time.
Bacall, actually, I get an email called, and I'm going to throw a little help out here. It's called Book Bub BB. It's an email you get every day, and you get discounted and sometimes free ebooks, Kindle and like that. They had Lauren Bacall's biography, like $1.99. I'm like, oh hell yeah,
Yeah.
all over that. And you know, I feel like there was more to Lauren Bacall than being Humphrey Bogart's wife. I don't. That's somebody else. I don't think really gets as much appreciation as she deserved.
Mm-hmm.
And in Dark Passage, you get to see some of that. Where here, not as much. Big Sleep probably is the best film of the four. And as I've told Joel and poor other viewers of this several times, I love Big Sleep. I have no idea what's going on, and I don't care.
Right.
But
I think that's the point. It's supposed to just turn you into knots, and the characters that are in it are turned into knots in a lot of ways too. So
Yeah.
it's a wild ride. It's a nice ride. There's several versions of Big Sleep. I like them all in different ways. So
Yeah.
What about Joel?
I'll just say this: the sexual tension in To Have and To Have Not is to die for.
it is.
Just put your lips together and blow. You could. So awesome. Oh my god!
It's like she's double daring him.
She's 19 at the time they do that movie.
Yeah.
That's what's amazing. But yeah, that's a good movie. I would say To Have and To Have Not, just simply because that's when they met, and that's sort of where they develop their chemistry. And now, if you ask me what's the best one out of all of them, I would say Dark Passage, yes, but especially for Lauren, she gets to do a lot of that. Like Butch said, she gets to do a lot of acting. It's a great story. It's different than what they've done before, and it's really unique in a way too. It's a great noir film, really, really great. But with this movie, Edward G. Robinson playing Rocco the gangster, and I love how they do. Bogart does the realization of who it is once he hears the name, and there's the great acting. What did you guys think of that? Butch, you first.
I meant to look it up and I forgot to. I think this is not long after Edward G. realized he was moving into quote supporting roles, and he, regardless of that or not, he nails it. I mean, this is the film that got me to do that. Rocky's mad. See, he's going to shoot you, cop.
Yeah,
and he's going to get you. You can't do that. See, and it's funny. I knew Edward G. Robinson actually more from Bugs Bunny cartoons than his films when I was a kid.
Those old classic ones. Yeah,
and he nails it. One of my favorite scenes in the film is when Lauren Bacall spits on him, and one of the other gangsters is like, "Yeah, slap her, Rocco," and Bogey steps in. No, he can't. That's okay for you. That's not okay for Rocco. Rocco would have to kill her, and then he'd have to kill all of us, and then he'd have to kill all of you. And he just walks through that whole scene, and it's just like, others were kings. He was an emperor, and you believe it. To a point where, whatever it was when they shoved him out of the United States, he lost it because you can see through this film, and Edward G. Robinson does a great job of it. Rocco is losing it during this hurricane. And he's never seen this. He doesn't know how to handle it. And I've always wondered if it was also an indication that the character, had lost whatever he had that let him be the emperor, so to speak.
Yeah, I think he was like Al Capone of Milwaukee or something, before during Prohibition. They talk about Prohibition and all that stuff. So I think he was big deal, definitely.
I used to always wonder if maybe they kind of weren't referencing some of his old gangster films, like the big Little Caesar and like that. If that's not supposed to be who he's doing,
Yeah, it is interesting that they do it because I think to a degree they are sort of referencing Al Capone in a lot of ways, but just they use Milwaukee instead of Chicago, which makes sense. Okay, you don't want to say it's Al Capone. That's fine. You want to come up with your own fictional character, which that's the thing. Edward G. Robinson's character is so damn scary in this, and he's so good. But sorry, Alan, what did you think? I'm sorry.
No worries. Yeah, I mean, he's layered in this. He's like a co-lead rather than a complete lead in this movie, and he fills the bill perfectly. He's got everything going. He's got misogyny. He's got insecurity. He's got sexual kinks going on. When she a little Spitfire. I used to have a girl that I used to slap around, that kind of stuff. And he's getting off on it. And even when she spits on him for a split second, it looks like it turns him on, and then he gets mad.
Yeah.
He's got these layers going on all through it. And obviously, he's also a guy that likes to toy with people's feelings and dominate them, which of course as a mob boss he would be that kind of personality anyway. But he tries to trap people into taking a shot at him when the gun is empty, that kind of stuff. So he's got that kind of sicko homicidal stuff going on where he likes to play games with it. He's got a lot of stuff going for him. He pulled everything there was to pull out of the script. There's no doubt about it.
And when he's when they're egging Lionel Barrymore on, come on, Pops, come on, come on. And he's slowly backing up. And here's this poor man, we don't know what's wrong with him, but he's in a wheelchair. And, he's like touching him. And he's like, if he could get his hands on Edward G. Robinson, he would have tore him, or he's tried. Of course, the other guys, ended that real quick. But, and he enjoys that. This is obviously someone who has been in power for a while and gets off on that power. Ooh, dance monkey, dance.
And this may be the first time he's had a chance to do that since he's gotten kicked out of the country and come back. So he's really getting off on it, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, that's the beautiful part about this movie too, with Robinson's performance. It's he hones on, hey, they kicked me out, and he's mad about it. But you also see he's in a world where he can take charge because he has his gunmen around him, because he's in a situation where he can be in charge in Key Largo in this hotel, and he's taking every advantage of everybody in there, like you guys have talked about. He's challenging people to gunfights. The gun's empty. They don't know it.
Right.
And when you see Humphrey Bogart's character not shoot, and they start laughing, a real live war hero. Now we know why. And then the guy gets the gun. He goes, I'm not afraid to use this. I'm thinking it's not. And before, when I first saw this, I'm thinking it's not loaded.
Yeah.
He's not, no gangster is handing you a loaded gun. And it's like, then when he gets to the door, he pops him. And it's like, my God, Robinson's so cold about it. It's like, Jesus Christ.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, he's playing elements of sociopathy through it as well. And he's he's intelligent, he's crafty, he's wily, he's, and he speaks in abusive tones to almost, or dismissive tones to almost everyone, but he's also trying to figure out who they are. Same time, what do they do? Will they, talk back to me? Will they do anything, like that? So, but he's incredibly sociopathic. Yeah, everything is transactional. And in the end of the movie, he's all about transactions. When one thing doesn't work, he tries something else, and then he tries threats, and then that doesn't work, so he tries something else, and he's trying to make a deal.
That's an interesting thing. I think that's also indicative of how he ran his empire and threats and reward was all he had. And when he run, there at the end of the film with Humphrey Bogart, it doesn't work, and he just simply can't understand that.
Right.
Yeah. And it's like, he is a character is stuck when he was, quote, the emperor, end quote, and he never really moves beyond that, because there's no need for, when you're the emperor, you don't change to match the empire. The empire changes to match. He doesn't realize he's not the emperor anymore.
Right. He's certainly not the emperor. In that conflict between those two men.
Yeah. It's sort of like that line in Goodfellas. Paulie may not have moved fast. It's because he didn't have to move for anybody, really. People came to him. That's sort of Rocco's character, in a sense. People used to come to this guy for favors and all this until he ran into the U.S. government, who's like, "We're not bowing down to you. We don't kowtow to nobody. Ask anybody. They don't kowtow to anybody."
Right.
And
all the things he talks about happening to him happened to real mobsters in the 30s and early 40s. They got deported. They got thrown in jail. Taxes usually is how they got them, but all of that stuff would happen. They figured out a way to harass the mob bosses, and that's what they did. Once to figure out a way to get rid of them one way or the other.
I do love how they reference the mob wars, which was a real thing back in the 30s, and it's like I told a friend of mine, I said, when I was watching this earlier today, I was telling Daniel Culver, I said, dude, they reference the real mob wars in this movie in a sense, and it's like, it's funny because it's like, oh my God, you can't believe they did that, but they did it.
Yeah. Almost every major city, but particularly Chicago and New York, had major mob wars, and they had territories and families, very different family factions, all of that. They talk about I guess it's the 5 families in New York. I'm not sure. Chicago's a little bit different. I think it was South Side, North Side kind of thing that they had.
Well, Capone was kicked out of New York. They sent him to Chicago
because he murdered a guy in the heat.
Yeah.
So got rid of him, and he didn't have enough juice to stay in town, and sent him away.
He made some juice in Chicago.
He did, yes.
Jesus Christ. What did you guys think of the first of all, the atmosphere and the way they use the weather as a plot device in this movie? Butch?
Yeah, one of my very few complaints about this film is a lot of the scenes, the external scenes of the hurricane are obviously miniatures with the little boats and stuff. But you know what? You don't care. That to me, that's a sign of a good film when you can see the flaws and you're like, I don't care. They're telling me a story. The hurricane, whatever you want to. It's kind of funny because I keep wanting to name it, but because it's almost a character.
It is, yeah.
It without being a character, it influences so much, and they do a really good job of it. Same family that lived down in Florida. Another part of them lived in, I believe, Bradenton, Florida, and we were down there one early part of the year, and they called for snow, and my God, they freaked out. And I mean, no, it was cold, and I think we saw literally one snowflake.
Mm-hmm.
I think I was early teens, and I was looking at my mom. I'm like, why are they freaking out so much? She's like, they don't have. Of course, I didn't know. She's like, they don't have anything. If it snows, they don't have any trucks, any salt, any that kind of stuff. And being a kid, you never really think of that. So one of the things still to this day, weather affects different places differently. I live in East Tennessee. We get 2 inches of snow. That's a big deal. Up there in with Mom and Pa Kettle up on the mountain where Joel lives, 2 inches of snow is a boring day. Okay, it's just 2 inches of snow.
Yeah, the elevation makes a huge difference there. If you're up in the Smokies or something like that, you're going to get a lot more of that stuff. Yeah.
So it ties well, and it gives you that claustrophobic. That we've seen films where people are stuck somewhere, and you're like, well, why don't they just this or that or this? There's nowhere to go.
Right.
There's a hurricane going on outside.
Yeah, we're used to the 7-8 inches up here. We're used to the snow up here in the mountains. That's the thing. Like when you go somewhere, right? Weather is a factor. I remember driving through Tornado Alley with my mother, and I could see the clouds roll out. And I looked at my mom. I'm like, "Are we gonna get a tornado? Is this place gonna get struck by a tornado while we're going through it?" And my mom said, "Just shut up and don't worry."
Keep going.
She's driving. I mean, my mother's going 80 miles an hour.
Yeah.
So
Right.
it's
Make
like,
sure she can beat the tornado line in case it happens. Yeah.
yeah, and it's like, oh my God. But you're
Even
right.
down here sometimes too.
Yeah. Weather is different everywhere because it's the things you're not used to. It's like Pennsylvania doesn't get hit with hurricanes. They might get hit with the aftermath of it, sure, but it's not much. It's like high winds and some rain.
Yeah.
Because we're inland, we're too far inland to experience that stuff. But there are places that do, and it's terrifying. Like I do remember there was one flood in Connellsville, and it was like a short flood. It wasn't like this deep thing. They did flood cars, and it was crazy. Yeah. So it's wherever you go, you're going to experience different stuff. And like when you see this movie and you see this hurricane, which I'll dub Hurricane McCrae, since our friend Patrick is with us, it's really, really good. The way they build the story through the characters of the bad weather and the impending doom that's coming their way, it's really well done. When they finally show it, because they're showing the sea being rocky throughout the picture, they're showing you could hear the high winds, and they're showing it. Beautiful job by the effect department from start to finish, and the actors sell their asses off.
Yeah, having the front room of that hotel set collapse added to a great deal to it too. That jumps you the first time you see it, so they did a fine deal with that. And also, of course, the actors need to build that tension that's being caused by this thing. It's not just that, but that's what's putting it over the edge for people like Rocco. I mean, he's out of control when that thing starts blowing. He's just completely freaked out because he can't control that. It's like Frank says, why don't you show up your gun? Let's see what happens.
Dude, yeah. It's like, the hurricane doesn't give a shit with who you are, what kind of weapon you have. It's a force of nature here. It is nature, for God's sake. Yes. It's like it's coming.
It's why when you get the proverbial "what superpower would you want?" my answer is always weather control.
You can do a lot with it.
Yeah.
You build your robots. Here comes a tornado.
Gone.
Wait, you know what? It's a snow tornado
with thunder and lightning. Storm in the middle of it.
And then once you've established your dominance, it's like, hey, Joel, you're getting married next week. Would you like nice weather for that wedding? What's it worth to you?
That's right.
What's $10,000. You want you're evading, and you want bad weather for them? What's it worth to you?
Yeah. That's exactly what, when you look at this film, it's like these, compared to that hurricane, these gangsters are nothing, and they realize it. Especially Rocco. It's like, I am power, because the Almighty Emperor is powerless to do anything about this hurricane.
And the sense of being trapped, it's like they want to get out of there, and they really can't do it at that moment the way they would like to.
Who's you guys? Because there's so many great characters in this movie. Who's your favorite character? Do you have one or more than one?
I mean, it's hard for me to disagree with Humphrey Bogart. I've been a Humphrey Bogart fan for about 30 years, and I hate to admit it, but there's parts of my personality that are based on the characters he plays. I wish I could make people jump like he does and lead them on. I wish I was as cool as him, There is not a wrong answer here, but for me, it's Humphrey Bogart.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's a tie for me between Frank and Johnny Rocco, because they're two sides of the same coin. One is much more understated and controlled, and then the other one is like the id. I want more. I want more, which he actually says at one point when he's asked. And the person who asks him is Frank. So it's like, yeah. And he keeps calling him smart guy, that kind of thing is going on. So there's resentment there, but it's also the difference between Rocco, who is a force of id and less intellectual, and Frank, who, although he's a man of action, is a more learned. He's smart. He sees things. He's able to elucidate them when he sees them and interpret them. So you got that. So both of those guys. I mean,
Yeah.
one without the other's like an Oreo without the middle.
Yeah. That's the thing when they call somebody a wise guy in this movie. What's worse, a wise guy or something, or a dame? And it's like the wise guy's worse. And it's like, okay. But yeah, Bogart, I love Bogart too. I mean, I've always enjoyed his movies. Him and Robinson have such great chemistry in this movie. They balance each off all the great. And it's not shocking. It's fucking Edward G. Robinson and Humphrey Bogart. And it's Lauren Bacall, who is in this movie. Though she's more of a damsel a bit in this movie, she does come off like a bit of a wildcat. And she does a good job of making her character get over too.
She has a moral center. She which sort of balances and grounds Frank at different moments when she reassures him, oh, I was wrong about you, Frank. You're not a coward. Da, 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 da. I could see from what you just did, and a lesser person wouldn't have seen anything in that except that Johnny was bullying Frank.
I like how Edward G. Robinson's talking to the cop. He's like, those two Indians, they murdered that guy. I saw them go up that way.
What a snake.
It's like, you son of a bitch.
Yeah.
But you also kind of respect him for it too. I mean, it's well, I didn't say anything, but
yeah.
And he does. It's not like, hey, copper, come here, let me tell you something.
Yeah, really.
I mean, it's just for especially, and I agree with everything Alan said. But for the id, he
has a wiliness about him. Yes, he has a cleverness about him. Absolutely. It's not a deep commitment to knowledge or anything like that. Some of it's instinctual. He's developed it over years of not being able to trust anybody and so on. But yeah, it is a cleverness that and he knows his territory, and that's his territory. Being mendacious, he can do that really well. So,
hey, I've got a dual question for us. So, but I'm going to start with Alan. Do you have a favorite of the sidekicks for Rocco, of the gangsters? And it's fine if you don't.
No, actually, the guy, I forget his name, the Angel, the guy who's floating behind the bar all the time. He's just kind of watching. But if you look at him, particularly the actor, he's filling that character with the reactions and the way he's watching things, and then of course. He at the end, he tries to stand up to Rocco on the boat, and Rocco blasts him because he won't go out there and get his head shot off. So I enjoyed that character because he wasn't like, there was one character that was sort of like Richard Widmark, who was kind of a psycho kind of guy. He was pretty cool, but he was more standard. He was more kind of the kind of character you expect to be there. Angel he just seemed to have an inner life going on more than some of the other characters. Subtle, but there.
Cool. Did you have one?
Yeah, the guy who offers Humphrey Bogart a drink, and then everyone's turning this dude down. And he's like, "What? What's wrong with me?" Yeah, that's like, yeah. So I like him. I forget his name, but
he's the one that Rocco keeps telling to talk.
Yeah. He's like, I bet we get prohibition, whatever. And he's like, then Rocco steals his lines. Yes.
Yes, of course he does.
Yeah.
Rocco's never had an original thought, but he's clever, but he doesn't have an original thought necessarily.
Yeah. Butch,
Rock doesn't original thought.
yeah. Butch, what about you?
That same Curly. I just he's not the power behind the throne, but he's the seneschal. When King Rocco is gone, Curly's like, okay, Joel, you go over here and you do this. Alan, you go over there and do that. And
Right.
Toots and Angel, he's he's the one that probably actually keeps the gang running.
The consigliere. Yeah.
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 Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, this is a great movie. I have no more questions. You guys got any points you want to make?
It's a brilliant movie. I mean, it's a 10 out of 10 for sure, maybe an 11 out of 10. Houston's direction is great. I'll tell you, it's embodied. The cinematography is embodied in me by actually, it's at the final scene after they get the phone call from Frank. He's going to be okay. He's coming back, and she goes and she opens the shutters, and the light just shoots in. It's just a beautiful. It's emotional. It gives you an emotional charge. It's a beautiful shot, and so yeah, that's part of the reason it's so great. And of course, the acting is brilliant in it throughout. It's really, casting is king, and they cast well in this movie.
Yeah.
I got two I don't know questions, points for both of you. Number one, when Frank comes back after the film, we're led to believe that Nora has developed feelings for him, and Dad has I forget the last name, the Lionel Barrymore. That they're going to kind of become a family.
Yeah.
Is that what happens? What do you think happens? Does
I like to think so.
Bogey could die from bloodshot.
I think there's so much cynicism in this movie leading up to this denouement that I like to believe that it does turn out well for everybody.
I think it turns out well for Bogart, but I also think there's going to be another hurricane one day.
Well, you're in Key Largo.
So, yeah. The fact that he stays there though too and deals with the hurricanes, it's like, you know what, I could live dealing with a hurricane. Another, going back to America and seeing another gangster. Yeah, no. You, Butch?
Yeah, I figure it probably all happens, but it's kind of interesting for me. What if he bleeds out from that gunshot? What if he's around and it doesn't work out? I mean, I'm sure we've all met somebody, thought we maybe got to a relationship with them. It's like it just didn't work out. Did he move on? My second, and I don't think it's. I was trying to see the name here, and of course I don't have any glasses on. This is actually a play, and apparently John Huston was really pissed once he found out it was a play because he had to have the story expanded. But let's make this movie today. Who would you cast if anybody comes to mind? For Frank, in my mind, you have to have somebody in their 30s, maybe even their 40s.
40s would be okay today. Yeah. Little war weary, but not too, not
right.
Too, yeah.
Anybody come to mind? Any of the cast? I mean, it was just funny. I never really came up with any satisfactory answers for myself.
Yeah, it's tough with those. They're so well drawn. The actors that do the characterizations, so well drawn. But there's got to be somebody out there that would do.
I will say, and I'm showing my utter complete bias here. William Shatner as the father.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Okay.
Because I'm a huge William Shatner fan, and I like him a lot too. But Shatner can act. A lot of people don't think so, but that man can act.
He started his career doing Shakespeare up in Ontario, and yeah, absolutely. And he was
And you
he became big on Broadway with The World of Susie Wong. Yes, back in '57. So he had a stage career. Yeah, he did.
I want to. I'm going to have that in the back of my mind, trying to come up with somebody. Somebody I did think of potentially, and I don't know if he could. I don't know if he has the chomps to pull it off, as Patrick would say. I think his name is Sam Worthington. He was in the fourth Terminator film.
Yeah.
He was the human / Terminator hybrid.
Yeah, I know you're talking about.
That age, it has to have, I don't want The Rock or anybody like that. Somebody,
no, please,
a regular
guy. Speaking of Sam, for Frank, Sam Rockwell could probably do it. He's around 50 now, I think, or he's 50, 52, but he could do it, I think. He's one guy that could do it. Then you've got for Rocco, Jesus, that's tough. That is really tough.
Downey Jr.
He's a good actor.
Yeah,
I think
he could probably pull it off. But he could also Frank. I mean,
I want to see RDJ play a villain, just play a straight up villain, and I want him to be an ass. I want him to be Rocco.
Yeah.
Did you ever see him in U.S. Marshals? He plays a villain.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I forgot about that.
Yeah.
He does a good job.
He does. He does.
I mean, I can see him.
Woody Harrelson.
Yeah.
Might be able to be in there somewhere. Could be a Rocco. Could also be the psychopathic sidekick. Various types of things.
Kevin Costner is Rocco. Because Kevin Costner makes a great villain.
Yeah.
Anyway, it was an interesting thing, and I never really came to a satisfactory conclusion as on Frank.
It's just like I say, you just keep seeing Johnny Rocco is Johnny Rocco, and there he is in living black and white, and that's what you keep seeing. That physical type, that the whole thing. It's so well drawn.
Yeah.
Hey, Joel, and this really probably isn't video worthy, but I'm just kind of curious. What are the special features on your Blu-ray there, buddy?
I got to turn on my light. Give me one moment.
Okay, everybody cover your eyes. You don't want to see what's behind Joel.
Yeah, no, you don't.
It's his kitchen.
Yeah, it's my kitchen. That's right. It's my kitchen. Let's see here.
It is terrifying, but it is only a kitchen.
Yeah, it's something, I tell you. I can't really see what the special features are. This print's too damn small.
I'd wonder if John Huston actually did some kind of a narration at one point. They caught him before he passed.
It says the bonus material is the trailer, but it got
okay. So maybe that's it's not. It doesn't have all the Blu-ray features
on this.
Yeah.
So I'm just curious if it was more.
Yeah.
No, I'll give you for the grandpa, I know he's old. But he's tough enough to play the grandpa, Clint Eastwood. He'd be the right.
Why not? One more role.
Why not?
You said that
wheelchair,
and my mind immediately went to Bruce Dern.
Yeah, Bruce Dern would do it. He would do the role. He'd be good for it too.
Yeah,
that'd be the thing too. So, but for the woman, we just covered her with White House Plumbers. Judy Greer would be an amazing actress to do that role.
Very good. She's very good. She can play almost anything.
But
she's that good. She's very character oriented.
Yeah. My gosh, I'm trying to think of Rocco because I keep thinking Midwest gangster. Oh my God. he hasn't acted in some time, but he could pull it off if he wanted to. It would be Tim Robbins.
I've seen him in one or two sort of cold villainous roles. He'd bring a completely different take on it, but yeah, he could probably do it.
Yeah, but
I think if you're redoing a film like this, where you know 3 of your main actors, sorry, I'm trying to plug that in, and if your actors are legend, you need to go a completely different route. You don't need to play Rocco like Edward G. Robinson did. You need to take Rocco and go, okay, Rocco's mine now.
Yeah. Yeah, you do. Actually, that's a service to the audience and the actor both. You can't really ask them to, copy anybody like that. It's not a good idea.
Yeah. But yeah, it'd be amazing to see. But this movie is an all-time classic. If you have not seen Key Largo, go buy this thing. It is worth owning. My God. And
you can buy it on YouTube for like $8-9. You can rent it for like $4.
You know what's a crime? Big Lots is going out of business. That's where I got this.
Yeah.
And do you know how much I paid for them? Do you know how much I paid? $3.
$3. Yeah.
That's it.
Cool.
See, our Big Lots has like, it's like those Good Time videos that they used to have at Walmart. It's not quite Transformers. It's shapeshifters or something.
Translators.
You can see what it's. Yeah, it's 99.999 repeating. It's crap.
Yeah.
Every now and then, I got Men at Work with Emilio Estevez and Charlie Sheen, which is a kind of a guilty pleasure for me. Those two, man, they do great.
Guilty pleasure for most people. It's very. I like it actually.
Yeah. But yeah, fun movie. Men at Work is fun. Charlie Sheen and Estevez are funny in it. Yeah. What are we doing in 2? Oh, that's right. We're doing My Darling Clementine in 2 weeks. That's right.
Yeah, we're doing that
in 2 weeks. All right.
And I have to send Joel my Amazon wish list so he can share it with everybody on his videos.
Cool.
First of all, guys, thank you so much. This was a lot of fun covering this classic, this masterpiece. I got to rewatch it today.
Awesome.
It's a fun watch.
It is.
It's a great movie to put in. Good.
And my wife said to tell you thank you for that also. So because she got to watch it too.
Cool.
Jill, you are awesome, lady. You're awesome.
Everybody happy.
That's right.
Happy.
Link to Alvin Gallant's YouTube channel, Collins Port After Dark, is going to be a description box. Yes, link to Patrick with Crazy Dark Shadows Day Book and Bound is going to be a description box. Butch, Alvin, you guys have a great night.
Peace out, guys. Pleasure as always.